Hey, continuing on, now we're getting to the nitty-gritty now. This is the student selection criteria. This is the page that sometimes has applicants feeling just a little queasy, a little nauseous, because this is where we kind of lay down how it is that we accept students into the program. Essentially, we can accept 10 students and only 10 students per year into our program as we are currently set up. Once we get things available online, then that can open up some more. But for now, we're still limited to 10 students per year. And we have more than 10 people applying, so how do we select which 10 get into the program? Well, it's all laid out here in the student selection criteria. Essentially, we have a point system. The crux of the point system, well, it's described in nauseating detail, the whole thing, but the crux of the point system is you take those general education classes that apply to our degree, like classes like freshman comp, math, A&P, medical terminology, anything that's the non-radiation therapy specific classes. Classes that start with something other than RADT or RADR at the beginning four-letter prefix on the classes. You take those classes, and based on the grade that you get in those classes, you'll get awarded a certain number of points. The better the grade, the more the points. The more classes you take, the more opportunities for points you have. The more points you have, the better your chances are of being accepted in the program. It's as simple as that. We take, essentially at the top, there's a listing here that tells how many students we take essentially into the second phase of our acceptance. And that second phase is the interview process. So a certain number of students, more than 10, I think 16 is what's listed, I don't remember, are accepted into an interview process. Then that interview process is something that students do face-to-face here in Amarillo, and that is done in front of a gathering of some of the radiation therapists from around the Amarillo area that volunteer their time to come and participate in the interviews, and you'll be asked some general interview-like questions. Nothing specific about the medical field or radiation therapy specifically, just basically know yourself, just like you would have to know yourself for a regular job interview kind of thing. So there's really no way to prepare too much for it. But the top people get invited to that. Then after that process, we whittle it down to the top 10 students, and those top 10 are invited into the program each fall. So getting back to the point system, you might notice that a couple of classes, the A&P classes, Anatomy and Physiology, and the math classes are actually worth more points. One thing I would say before I forget is that it's actually more important to get good grades than to take tons and tons of classes. Think of it this way. If somebody takes 4 classes and they make straight C's, they could have actually got more points if they'd have taken just one class and made an A. So take as many classes as you feel that you can really do well in. It's more important to do well. I've had some applicants in the past who have taken maybe all of the classes that there are, but they make nearly all or all C's, and that just doesn't add up to very many points. So those people in the past have not been able to be accepted in the class, even though they've taken all the classes. The sad thing is the only way to kind of increase their points for the next time around is to retake the classes that they've already taken and made C's in and try to make A's and get the A points valued rather than the C points valued. Kind of the nice thing is that if there's more than one class that fits a specific need or opportunity for, like say, a social and behavioral science class, say you've taken economics and government and psychology, all 3 of those satisfy our social and behavioral science class. What I do is I take the class that applies to that requirement and take the class with the highest grade to give you the most points out of the deal. But anyway, getting back to the A&P and math classes, those are worth more points, in part because they're hard classes. I think you should be rewarded for doing well in a hard class. Also, A&P, and to a little bit lesser extent math, are some skills that are used in our program. A&P especially is, I think, a really good barometer for how people will do in my program. People that struggle through A&P make maybe C's or lower in A&P, and by the way, nothing lower than a C is even transferable, so if you make lower than a C, it's not going to be 0, it is going to be 0 points, and it would not count towards our degree anyway. So my experience is that people that make C's or lower in A&P tend to really struggle in my classes. People that make A's in A&P or really high B's and stuff tend to do much better in my classes. So that's another reason that class is valued higher. Math, certainly to a lesser extent, can apply the same way. There's some math in our program, not as much as you would have in, say, a full semester of college algebra, but I would say we have more math in radiation therapy than there is in, say, the X-ray program or many of the other, probably all the other allied health programs. There's not tons and tons of math. I don't think it's terribly important to have a strong math background, but The only thing that I've noticed is that people that are true, genuine math phobics tend to struggle through some of the math stuff in our program. Nobody's ever failed our program because of math, but there are some people I've seen that, like, well, my wife is a very bright, very well educated, very intelligent person, but she just is a true math phobic. If you say math, then she gets the deer in the headlights look, and the people that have that kind of a pure panicky fear about math will have a lot of obstacles to overcome in order to get through the math stuff. And you know, since math is, well, you know, we're calculating radiation doses for patients. We're kind of picky about getting that right for some reason. So the math that we have, it's not tons of math, it's not hard math, it's not really usually anything harder than a direct proportion kind of thing, a very easy algebraic kind of thing. But the math that we have is important to get right. So we're a little picky about that as well. Okay, there's more discussions about how you can get a point here or a point there based on overall GPAs and stuff like that, but it's basically take the general education classes that apply to our degree and do well in them. That's the best advice I can give you. Some people ask, well, how many points does it take to get accepted in the program? Short answer, truthful answer, I don't know. Because you are competing with all the other applicants, however ambitious or non-ambitious they may be. In some years it takes a ton of points to get accepted in the program. Some years it doesn't take very many points at all. It just depends on how many students I have applying and how gung-ho they are. And I really don't know how that's going to work out from one year to the next. And even as it gets close to the application deadline, I still don't know, because, well, sometimes people will call me up and say, well, you know, the deadline's in 3 weeks or something. How are things looking for me? I still don't know, because there's a really good chance that there's still a good number of people that have applied already for my program that are still taking classes in that spring semester, so they can get those classes, those points, to apply for the deadline. So I simply don't know until the deadline hits. Then I gather up all the applications and look at all the updated transcripts and stuff, and that's when I really start adding things up. So I'm sorry to be a mountain of jello here, but I'm not going to be of much help about how many points it takes. I would say if I have to make some sort of wild, crazy guess, I would say if you can get into the 30s in terms of points, then you should feel a bit more at ease with at least maybe getting your foot in the door to have enough points to being in the interview. That's no guarantee, but typically if you have in the 30s in points, then you're sitting pretty well as far as at least getting into the interview process, and probably sitting fairly well as far as making it into the program as well. But every year is completely different. So that takes care of the student selection criteria. One more quick thing to point out in the student selection criteria, towards the bottom of the second page there's a paragraph all in bold print, so it must be important. It is. That paragraph states in essence that if any of your contact information changes, it is of utmost importance that you let me know, preferably via email. Let me know how to contact you. Sometimes I have to contact people on short notice, and if I'm not able to do that, bad things can happen. Long story short, one woman, I had to contact some critical information to her. I sent her an acceptance letter. It had to be signed and returned by a certain date, but she had moved, didn't let me know. She didn't get the letter in time until the deadline had passed for her to turn that letter information back in. By then, it was too late. Long story short, too late for that. Anyway, she lost her spot because she didn't get her stuff on time. I don't want that to happen to you or to anybody else. So if any of your contact information changes, cell number, email, anything, I have to know. And our keyword for this section is going to be the word career. Career. See you in the next section.